A lot of the pictures that I deal with Sagelight are portraits like this one. Now this is a nice picture. It has nice light to it. There are certain things that can be done to it. One of the things that I run across a lot are areas of the eyes that can be brought out. This particular picture is kind of what you might call a middle range in that area, where a lot of pictures the eyes are even more shadowy. You know, they kind of where they're in our eye sockets, and they kind of get in the shadows sometimes. Like these eyes, you can see the eyes are a little dark, although they look okay. But what we can do here is we can bring them out in a way that looks much better for the picture. So with this picture, what we can do is we can move into look at the eyes a little bit closer. Some pictures, depending on how big the eyes are in a picture, will need to move in. Other pictures you can just do just by looking at it at the normal size. And then what we can do is we can look at the mask. There's a few options with the masking. What we want here is we want to draw a mask or a vignette. And what we want to do is we can see that we have this brush here. And what we want to do is we want to get the brush size about the size of the eyes. Then what I can do is I can just paint over the eyes just like this. I'm creating a mask. And I don't have to be very accurate. You can see that I'm not really worrying about really zooming into the eyes here. I'm not really worried about getting the exact outline of the eyes. I'm just doing a really broad stroke. And that's one of the things that makes this really nice and easy to do. So now what we can do is we can leave this here, but I think just for the general picture so we can see what's going on, we can just move back. I'm going to click this button right here, and what it will do is it will go ahead and put the picture back to full screen so we can see it inside the editor. And maybe I'll zoom in a little bit just so we can look at the eyes. And so with this mask box open, what we can do is then we can, let me get rid of the histogram and the move these over a little bit over here. And so what we can do is then we can use the brightness control in addition to some of these other controls. It depends on really how you want to bring out the eyes. Like here, I brought them out and they look pretty natural. Or what I can do is I can really bring out the highlight brush and then, the highlight slider, and then make them a little more contrasty. So it really depends on what you want to do with the picture. Like that looks really nice, and a lot of contrast to the eyes. Or like I said, I can come out here and I can bring these up and make the eyes a little bit brighter with a little less contrast. It really depends on what your judgment is. There's no real specific way to do it. They all look pretty good, actually. So let me go ahead and go back to the main view here where I can look at the entire picture. And then what I can do is I can continue to go ahead and play with these controls. And a lot of times I use the term play with these controls because that's really what I'm doing. There's no real intention as much as I'm just moving the controls to see what I want. Once you get used to the controls, you realize that when you use these bottom controls, you tend to get more contrast, and then things get brighter when you use these bottom two controls. But you can see that looks pretty natural. Or maybe I'll bring out the brightness a little bit. One of the things I've noticed in a lot of pictures, for every picture that I use an example, I can look at hundreds of samples because you want to get one that represents what you're doing, and you want to make sure that it's something that you can change easily and that sort of thing. And when I looked for pictures for this tutorial, what I saw a lot of was I saw that a lot of people were really bringing out the eyes more, and I really didn't even think about that, but it is kind of a nice look. So what I can do, for example, is I can really bring out the eyes here, and if you bring them out too much, of course, that just doesn't look right. But what you can do is you can say, okay, when you bring them out in kind of a natural way like that, that looks good, but if you go just a little bit, it can really focus in on the eyes. And like I said, it's really kind of a personal choice. And you can see that as I move the feather along, let me zoom in a little bit. As I move the feather, I'm really changing things. And this is where, perhaps that if you want to edit the mask, you can subtract just a little bit, if you're really going to go for it. And then that way, as I move the feather now, it's really going to adjust the eyes less. And like I said, that's why you don't really need to worry about being completely accurate with your brushstrokes, because these controls really help you out there. So that's basically the whole tutorial. I'm going to do a couple more things just to continue on the idea of dealing with portraits, some of the other things that Sagelight can do. But if we look at the before and after on this picture, for example, you can see that the eyes really were kind of in the shadows. So like I said, that's basically the tutorial. So now what I want to do is I want to press apply to apply that, and then what I can do is I can just dismiss this mask here. And then what I'll do is I'll get rid of the histogram in this info window. And this is a good place to show another one of Sagelight's tools. In the toolbar, there's this little lion, and what it is the dodge and burn control. And if you're familiar with the dodge and burn control, especially if you're familiar with it in Adobe or other packages, there's usually a brighten and a darken. What I added with Sagelight was a highlight tool, and it's really good for things like this. It's a very powerful tool, so you want to go very lightly. What happens with dodging and burning is that you can often it kind of creeps up slowly on you, and so sometimes you don't really see what's happening as you're doing it, and so you want to do a little bit in the back and then do the before and after and see what you're doing. So what I can do with the highlight tool is I can just go over the face just a little bit. And just run over a little bit, and you can see very quickly what I've done is I've just added highlights. And with the highlight tool, you always want to use the undo brush. What you want to do is you want to press accept. It's always going to hit some areas more than you want. Since we just did these eyes, I'm going to put them back to where they were, even though I could have kept them. But one of the things that it did, too, is that you can see that it really kind of blew out this area with the flower. In this particular case, I like it because it puts more focus on her face. And so as you can see, that very quickly I've been able to really bring up the highlights in her face. And what I did with the eyes is really starting to work out now. So another thing I can do with this picture, since it's a portrait, is I can smooth it a little bit. You can see it's a little grainy in there. That's probably because of the original JPEG compression. But you can see in here, there's little things going on. I think it actually looks pretty natural. But what I can do, just to show that you can do it, is I can go ahead and I can do the skin smoother, because it really does work out well on a lot of photographs. This particular picture, she has a very smooth skin already. She's probably wearing makeup. You can actually see a little bit of the makeup there. And what I can do is with the skin smoother, what I did is I set the skin tone radius, and what that is that you just really outline the face. And then what it does, it sets the radius so that you can just bring out the range, and you can see how it smooths the skin. And what a lot of people do, you see this a lot, when you go out on the web and you see videos on this, what they'll do is they'll do something like that, and it'll actually make the picture look fake because it makes it look like she's wearing a lot of makeup. What I like to do is more of a realistic approach, where I just do just a little bit, and I can set the strength back, and then I can do that. And then what I can do, this is how you really want to use the skin smoother, is you go to the undo brush and you start with the original, and then what you do is you just paint back in certain areas. Or alternatively, what you do is you start with the whole picture, and then you just undo areas that have definition, like these eyelashes, the mouth and nostril area, and sometimes the hair. Sometimes leaving the hair a little soft works too. But then what it does is it really completes the picture. It makes it more realistic because you're leaving sharpened things that need to be sharp, and then you're just softening the skin. And what that does is that can look pretty good. And so you can see just the before and after here. Just get rid of some of those blemishes. It still looks pretty natural. And on other pictures, you can do a lot more work. This one didn't really need a lot of work. Another thing that we can do with this picture is we can bring up the shadows a little bit. There are a lot of ways to do that in Sagelight. One of the ways that we can do this is with the power box. This is a new thing in version 4. And we can go to the darken area. If you see this video later on, it may be called the superfill area because I'm splitting this darken area out into 2 different layers. Because if you use the darken, usually it means you can darken things. That really was the main purpose. But it turns out that going the opposite direction can really brighten things too. And so just click the lows here, which is the shadows. And what we can do is we can bring out the shadows, and we can use a softer brush or a smaller brush. And we can select the range so that we can just really hit these shadows right here. And you can see that looks very nice. And whether we want to use softer or not just depends on what the picture looks like. And we can feather it just a little bit just to get this area in here. And so you can see that it really does help bring out the hair, these in the shadow here. And then I can press apply. And then what I want to do is I want to use the undo brush to undo the areas of the face that it hit. You can see it hit that cheek there and everything. And that's just the way it is with a lot of functions, that they do hit areas that you normally wouldn't want to hit. I mean, that's the power of the undo brush, is that you can do these changes and then not have to keep them all. And so you can see that it really brought out the hair. I really like the way it brought out this hair area here. If I were to work on this picture a little bit more, I might go back into the dodge and burn brush and highlight the hair. But I think this is fine enough. And in fact, maybe what I can do is really put these shadows back around her face to highlight, to kind of frame her face. And so what we have here is we have a picture that's very different than the original picture. and the face is brighter, and the shadows are brought out a little bit. And the original reason for this tutorial was that the eyes are really just really popping out of this picture. I shouldn't have said it that way. What I really mean to say is that they're really highlighted in the picture, and I think they really bring you into the picture a lot more than they did. So that's the tutorial, and I hope you try it out on some of your pictures.